I'm delighted to be here and talk to you about my book, Life-Changing Conversations. I thought I'd share with you something that Mark Haddon, the British poet and author, said. He's the author of The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night, and he said, "Reading is a conversation. All books talk, but a good book listens as well." And so the plan for this evening is I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes about the book, and then you're going to have the opportunity to ask questions, and I get the opportunity to listen to you, and we can have some dialogue about conversation. So the reason that I wrote the book is because I've struggled myself sometimes to talk when there have been tough things to say, when I've been afraid of ruining a relationship by what I might say to the other person. And in my case, when I look back, I've sometimes waited not days or weeks or months, but years before I've had that conversation. And I've asked myself, what does it take to talk when there are tough things to say without rupturing a relationship? And the book is my answer to that question. It's born out of my own life experience and also my experience as a psychologist. I've been a psychologist for about 20 years. I specialise in organisational psychology, and so I've also observed that many people in the workplace, as well as in their personal lives, sometimes struggle to talk. And it's not easy. It sounds simple, but I want to acknowledge that it's not always easy to go over to the other side and speak to a person, to meet them where they are while staying true to yourself. But there are things that we can do that help ease this process. And so in the book I come up with 7 strategies, or 7 shifts as I prefer to call them, for the inner work and the outer work we can do to talk with other people. And so I'm going to talk you briefly through these 7 shifts, and as I go through them you might like to think for yourself about some conversation that you're contemplating having, and to see if any of this applies to you, whether it's about talking to your partner, to your parents, to your boss, to a colleague, to a neighbour, or whomever. So first of all, I want to recognise that conversations sometimes require courage. And so the first shift, I call it call up your courage. In the workplace, the research shows that about 70% of managers say that they don't have the know-how, or they lack the courage to have conversations about poor performance. And so how can we call up our courage? Well, one of the things we can do is to realise that we have options. One option is to have the conversation, and another option is to stay silent. And there are risks and benefits to both options. And if you take a good look at it, sometimes what you realise is that the risks of staying silent might be greater than the risks of speaking out. Because in the absence of speaking out, sometimes what happens is that the hurts continue, the resentment festers, the relationship continues to break down. And so sometimes we just need to take a deep breath, look the other person in the whites of their eyes, and call up our courage, which is actually there inside all of us, and have that conversation. The energy in the room shifts. To use the expression that the Quakers used, the room gathers, and then truth can be spoken, and there is a clarity to that, and there is an acceptance to that that doesn't happen when there isn't a container. I also want to acknowledge the role of intentionality in conversation. Many authors in the mind, body, spirit field are writing about the power of intention at the moment, and the way that when we have clear intention we're more likely to manifest what we want. And so in conversation it really helps sometimes to do some preparation offline before going online and talking to the other person. Asking yourself, what's my intention? You know, Is it to ask for forgiveness? Is it to say, I'm sorry? Is it to give some feedback? But the clearer you are with your intention, the higher the intention is, the more likely you are to have a productive conversation. Also important is respect. So in the book I write about connecting with respect. So meeting the other person where they are. Different people speak different languages, and I'm not talking about French or Spanish or Arabic or Cantonese. I'm talking about some people speak more the language of the head. They want to talk about their thoughts. They want to analyse things more. Other people speak more the language of the heart. They want to talk about their feelings and their emotions. And some of the art of conversation is tuning into the other person, working out what kind of language they speak and meeting them there. And that sometimes requires a certain adjustment on our own behalf. The quality of the tone in a conversation is really important. We know from the research on marriage, for example, by Professor John Gottman in the States, he can take an hour-long video of a conversation between a couple talking about a contentious issue, and he can predict with 95% certainty whether that couple will be married or divorced 15 years later. Okay, that is long-range prediction. It rarely happens in the world of psychology that we can get such accuracy, and it's all about the tone of the conversation between the two partners. And what kills a conversation are a number of things, chief among them being contempt. I also want to mention the role that speaking your truth plays. This is fundamental to having a big conversation or any kind of life-changing conversation, and yet again it can be extraordinarily difficult to do sometimes. The research shows that in everyday conversation we reveal what we're truly feeling normally only 2 to 3% of the time. Most of us don't tend to wear our hearts on our sleeves, but when we speak our truth we do need to speak about what we're feeling. Feelings are the language of the soul, to use the words of Neil Donald Walsh, and that is how we really connect on a deeper level with other people. Also in conversation, somewhat paradoxically, the deeper work to do is actually to look at the conversation you're having with yourself. What's going on with your inner dialogue, with your inner thoughts? Because if your inner voice is saying, I'm not good enough, or I don't know how to connect with this person, or who am I to speak out, then that is going to stymie the conversation before you've even got started. And so again, there are ways that we can become more conscious of the inner voice inside ourselves, and we can start, once it's made conscious, we can start changing those thoughts to be more affirming, so that we can open ourselves up and speak to the other person. Actually, if we talk, then we can sometimes release all that energy and start a new life for ourselves. And so maybe I'll just end with something that Gandhi said. He said, "Nobody can hurt me without my